Similarly, I need train test split function. So basically, after creating a data, I will split the data into the training and testing component. So I need this function as well, which I will import from sklearn.model_selection. So let's click on this cell so that we can import all these important Python libraries in our Google Colab environment. Now it's time to create a data set, and I am going to use a function known as make_classification. Now for make_classification, I have to pass few input parameter to this function. The first is number of samples. So if I want to generate 5 samples, I need to pass number of samples is equals to 5. So here is the number of samples. We can put any value to this number of sample. If we want 100 samples to be generated, then we can pass number of samples is equals to 100. Similarly, I need 2 features for this data set. I want both of these features to be informative, and I don't want any of the feature to be uninformative, that is the redundant feature or the repeated feature. And number of classes is equals to 2. So basically, I want the data set to generate 2 labels for these samples. So I have 5 samples, 2 features, and 2 labels. Let's create the data. Now, after creating the data, the first important step always should be to check the type of the data. So if we see the type of the data is a tuple. Now we have learned in the section on Python crash course that tuple is also an important data structure in Python. So the type of the data generated by the function make_classification is a tuple. Let's check the length of the data. So the length of the data is 2. So the type is tuple and its length is 2. Let's see the data. So this is the data. If we see, it is a tuple of length 2. So this is the first element of the tuple, and this is the second element of the tuple. So what is in the first element of the tuple? So in the first element of a tuple, we have 5 rows and 2 columns. So these 5 rows are our 5 samples, and these 2 columns are our 2 features. And what is in the second element of the tuple? After this parenthesis, the second element of the tuple is start also as an array. So this is the second element of a tuple. So these are the labels. So we have 5 samples and we have 5 labels. So in that way, we can see that we have generated a data using a function make_classification, but that data is in the form of tuple. Its length is 2, and here we have observed the data. Now we can separate the first element of the tuple and the second element of the tuple. So we have to perform tuple unpacking. So if we want to separate the first element of the tuple, we have to pass the index 0 to the data, because the index in Python starts from 0. So if I pass 0 to this data and I am storing it into a variable known as x, so this is my first component of the feature. Now, if I see x, we can see that we have 5 samples and we have 2 features, which is according to this value. Now it's time to unpack the second part of the label. But before this, we can also check the type of x. Now the type of x is no more tuple. It should be a numpy array, because we can see array here. So here I am going to check the type of the tuple or type of x, and here I am going to check the shape of the x here. So I am getting the error here, and the reason is I need to run this cell first. Now it is x, and now the type of x is numpy array. And if we see the shape of the x, it is 5 by 2. That is, we have 5 rows and 2 columns, which is confirmed by this. Now we can extract the labels as well. So label are present at the second element of the tuple. For the second element, we have to pass the index 1 to our data, and I am storing it in the variable small y, and here I can observe my y. So in this way, we can see that using a make classification function, we can create the data. The data will be created in the form of tuple, and it will has a length 2. Why it has a length 2? Because the first element will be about the features and the second element will be about the label. And we can easily extract the features and label by performing tuple unpacking. Now, let's understand more about this function make_classification. So basically, make_classification generates the data randomly. Like if I run this cell again, I will get the different values of a data. Let's see this. If I run this cell again, and now if I observe the data, you can see that these values are different now, and the labels are also different. You can see the different positions of 0 and 1 in the labels. If I run this again, and now I run this data, you can see the different value of the samples here. Let's see. So we can see that every time we run this make classification function, it will provide us the different values of our samples and different value of the labels. Now, what we can do, if we want that every time we run this cell, we get the same samples, we have to pass a seed on that function. Seed means we have to provide the random state to the function. So let's see how we can do that. Random underscore state is equals to 42. Now here I have passed the value of 42. You can pass any value. That is, you can pass a value of 100, you can pass 200, you can pass 1, you can pass even 0 to this value. So what will happen with the random state is that now this function make classification will generate the same samples every time. Now let's run this cell and now see the samples. So if we see the sample now, this is 1.26 and this is minus 1.0. Now run this data again and now see the data. So we can see that now the samples remains the same. So what is happening now, since we have passed the value of a random state, now this make underscore classification function will generate the same samples for us, whether we run it for many times. Let's run this again to confirm this. So we have created the data, and if I see the data, we can see that it will have the same value, that is 1.26 and minus 1.02. So till now in this project 1, we have learned a very important thing. We will also learn the data normalization technique and min-max scaling technique in this project. But before applying these techniques, we need to create the data. So we have learned a very important function which is known as make underscore classification. And we can see that how we can use this make underscore classification function in order to generate the data. So I hope you understood this lecture. So this is the first lecture on the project 1. The project 1 is continued and I will continue this project in the next lecture as well. See you there.